You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in.
Hi, my name is Laurel Farrer. I'm a founder and CEO of Distribute, which is a consulting firm specializing exclusively in remote work and virtual organizational development. And I am here at the Relead Summit in Washington, D.C.
Relead?
That was like totally professional. I'm impressed.
Wow. I mean, you are kind of a professional.
I've been outshined here. This was our show.
It was.
Laurel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So we're talking about measuring success in the remote hybrid workspace. And I'm left wondering, are there specific ways that can be measured? Because it seems like such a broad topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like organizations first need to define why they're doing this, right? Because they're just positioning, they're benchmarking to all of the other companies and they're saying, well, they're doing it and they're doing it, so we should do it. And it's like, since when have you ever made business decisions in that way, right? So we need to first look at the internal motivators of why should we, as an organization, make this decision? What are we hoping to get out of it? Is it talent attraction? Is it talent retention? Is it operational efficiency? Is it innovation? Is it diversification and market representation? Like, what are you trying to get out of this?
Okay.
And then measure those. Like, lean on your existing data that you already have, and then just see how workplace flexibility impacts it. Does it go up? Does it go down? And so we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just saying, is this strategy improving the business metrics that we already use to measure success?
Geez, Laurel, we've talked a ton of times. I don't think I ever really thought about the idea. I thought where you were going with was you got to define what remote work means to the company, which is true. But I really love this idea of understanding, why do we want to go remote, or why do we want to implement flexible schedule? I absolutely love that. So are there any examples that you've experienced where somebody said, hey, we're doing this because of A, and then what was the next progression after that? I'd love to know, have you experienced that at all?
I think one example that a lot of companies resonate with right now is culture, because that's a really big question, right? Of we need to go back to the office for culture. Right. So when we actually go into data-driven decision-making, this is a very classic story that we have with a lot of our clients, is we say, well, what does that look like? What are your metrics for culture? And they're like, I don't know.
Right? Gotta measure first.
Yeah, it's the feeling that you get, and it's engagement. And
I feel
connected. And it's like, well, but what does that actually mean to feel connected? We start looking into the metrics, and sometimes it's pulled from engagement survey data. Sometimes it's pulled from HR data. Sometimes it's pulled from whatever. And we say, okay, how are you defining your culture, right? Is it innovation? Is it engagement? Is it talent retention? Is it trust? Is it whatever? What are these values that you hope to represent in your culture? What data do we have that could represent that? And then we measure, has that gone up or has that gone down in the past 2 years? And most of the time, that data goes up. People feel more engaged, they feel more connected, they feel more trusted, they feel whatever. And so that's when we go back to leaders and say, as you are defining your culture, it has strengthened while you've been working in a distributed work environment. So going back to the office as an excuse of, well, we got to go back for the culture is null and void.
Yeah, and actually you might not want to do that because you don't want your culture to drop. Here's the evidence. Thank you. That's a great example.
It corners the leaders too, right? Yeah. That it's like, well, you're not going back for the culture, so why are you going back?
Right. Well, that kind of segues into another thing that I was thinking about was, how do you deal with leaders who, there's no question that they're kind of pushing back on the whole remote thing. But then they come back and say, well, we're going to dip our toe in the water and try the hybrid thing. How do you best optimize that situation?
Woo.
Yeah.
We have a lot of thoughts on hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we have to get nerdy a little bit, and we have to go into a history lesson.
Okay.
Prior to the pandemic, so first history lesson is that remote work has existed for a half of a century. So this is not a new pandemic trend, right? So it's existed for a long time. And prior to the pandemic, there were some very infamous case studies of remote working companies that allowed flexibility in telecommuting at a large scale and then retracted those policies. Companies like IBM, Yahoo, a few federal agencies in the United States.
I remember that.
Yeah, right. So it went and then they retracted. And that was because they were hybrid teams. It is so much easier to be 100% on-site or 100% distributed.
Makes sense.
So prior to the pandemic, we as consultants were like, don't even try hybrid. Like you can if you want to, but you're going to have to put in so much more work and intention. It is very, very hard to make that employee experience equal. So we said it's very high risk. If you want to put in the effort, go for it. Otherwise, don't even bother. Just go 100% remote.
Okay.
Fast forward to 2022, where we now live in a world where hybrid is the new normal because of all of these leaders see it as the middle ground. They don't understand that hybrid is actually the opposite end of the pendulum that is even harder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's the hardest one to implement by far.
Exactly. So that's the first conversation that needs to happen is if you are doing this, whether it be 5% distributed or 100% distributed, you've got to come into this with intention. This is not a dip your toe in the water, like you're saying, that you invest in it or you don't.
So they just don't understand it.
Yeah, they don't understand.
And you know what the funny thing is about the dip your toe in the water? It's almost like, well, we don't want to go full remote. So we're just going to kind of go partially remote.
Yeah.
But then
see how it goes.
Let's see how.
And that's the problem, right? And that right there is like what that's saying underneath is saying we're going to continue to operate as usual. And this is going to be on the side, which means we're never going to invest in this.
Correct.
Stay with me.
I did it. I made him spit out his beer.
Let's see how it goes. Let's just see how it goes. But I guess what I was saying in that moment was like, the thing is it's not going to be done well.
Exactly. It's always going to be an other. It's always going to be a lesson.
Because they think it's easier. They're like, well, we don't want to go full remote. It's like, well, if you went full remote, it's actually easier.
Which is exactly what happened in those historical case studies. It was always an other. It was always an afterthought. It was always, here's this other demographic while we do the real work. And so that will never be equal. So in order to be successfully hybrid, you actually have to operate as a 100% distributed company because that is what makes location irrelevant. So that way, if you're operating as 100% virtual, that's what makes everybody equal. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting 5 feet away from each other or 5 continents away from each other.
That's interesting. I love that virtual first. I'm going to start using that a little bit more than remote first. But I got a question, like just freestyling here. What do you think is going to happen to all the office space? Like, because in my mind, I just kind of feel like, you know, there is a population that has a better experience working for them because maybe their home situations aren't right. You know, like they just don't have the things that they need. But for a majority, I'm not feeling how hybrid's going to be successful because, you know, what we're talking about right now, go into the office, one person on Zoom, everyone on Zoom to keep it equitable. People driving into the office right now, sitting on Zoom calls, are pretty pissed off.
Of course.
Like, I mean, I live in Atlanta, so that commute's like an hour, no matter where you go, at least. So to drive in that commute and sit on a Zoom. So like, to me, that's not making the best use of the office.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So then what do we do with the office space? What's your thoughts? What do you think's going to happen?
So what we see right now in 2022 is not representative of what we'll see in 2, 3, 5, 10 years. Because now people are voting with their feet. And they're saying, no, I want to continue to work from home. And so I'm going to exclusively work from home to prove that to you, right? To prove that to the employers. Whereas in normal circumstances, when they didn't feel as pressured to make an ultimatum decision, they probably would go into the office here and there.
Like on their own.
Like, oh, yeah, I'd like to go into the office today. Like, I'd like to have somewhere quiet to work because my kids are home and stuff like that. But right now, they're drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, this is what I want. And so I'm going to stay home exclusively. So we're not seeing typical organizational behavior right now. But over time, there will be more of that need. Kids come home for summer and there's, the dog barking in the background, or you just need a change of scenery. We're all mobile workers, right? And there's definitely days that we're like, I don't want to work from home today. I want to go somewhere else, right? So yes, absolutely. Co-working spaces are very, very much the shift in interior design, corporate interior design.
So you feel like the corporate office will become
much more co-working
space.
space. Yeah, hub and spoke models are going to become a lot more popular. So instead of having the giant office in New York and Silicon Valley, you'll have lots of smaller offices where you have pods of people. And so they can get together as a team and co-work in a local area. So that we're going to see that happening a lot more often.
I agree.
But ultimately, real estate will shift, right? This is the next industrial revolution. And we saw this the last time, right? I come from New England and Connecticut, and there's lots of empty factories.
Yes, right. So now look at all the condos now and restaurants now,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So we as a society, this is our environmental responsibility, is to figure out how to repurpose real estate in a way that makes sense for this new socioeconomic lifestyle.
Wow, that's a lot to chew on.
Unpack that for
the future. Hopefully, I hope that they convert some of these skyscrapers into some living spaces. I hope that we can put some of our senior folks maybe in some nice, great places downtown. I know my moms would love it. Shout out to anyone who builds at the sky. I know that my moms would love being in downtown to go to movies and.
This is just a sign of evolution, right? We have empty malls too because
Shopping
of Amazon.
Malls, exactly. Yeah.
So it's not like this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and this is the first time this has ever happened to the real estate industry.
It's perfect. It's all on one floor. There's no stairs. Make them all into retirement communities.
That's what my husband said.
They love it. Yeah. They walk it anyway already. They go all the walk.
And it's all covered, climate controlled.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You'd never have to leave.
Hey, remotely we are one. We're solving stuff here.
We are. We're the problem solvers.
Problems here.
So enough about this business talk. Okay. Let's get down to brass tacks and the nitty gritty. Tell us something about yourself that a lot of people might not know. Could be embarrassing, could be fun.
I'm blind in one eye.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I would never have known.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm blind. I'm legally blind, so I only have peripheral vision in one eye.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have a lot of health problems as well, which is part of the reason why I'm such a remote work advocate is because if I had climbed the ladder in a traditional way, I never could have kept traditional employment because I would have had to take so many days off.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I would be able to stay home and take care of my health problems.
Yeah.
And nobody ever knew.
Wow.
I know I didn't.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to ask you this, and it's going to be very culturally insensitive. Have you ever worn an eye patch?
I did when I was a kid.
Interesting.
Yeah, just
so this
for
is
about
something
a year.
that you've been doing for your whole life.
I have amblyopia.
Okay.
So lazy eyes. So my eyes do move together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, but I don't have depth perception.
Okay. I mean, you can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprise!
Yeah, you had it well.
Didn't expect that.
Shocked
Did
us. Shocked us.
We better rethink that question. Laurel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Where can our viewers and listeners find you online?
I think LinkedIn is always the easiest way.
Okay.
So it's just Laurel Farrer, and I'm the only one.
Cool. Well, we'll have to connect on LinkedIn then.
Of course.
All of us.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotelyone.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.